Okay, let's continue. Well, another thing I want to talk about, well, in the earlier visualization is, well, when you are seeing this one, and remember we didn't specify the range of the x-axis or the range of the y-axis, but by handling the data, pi matplotlib will be able to decide the range of the x and y axis by itself. So, well, usually if you want to trust matplotlib, and then you don't have to make the specify the range of the x and y axis by yourself. But if you want to do so, feel free to do so. And especially, well, if you're trying to make this visualization to cheat people's eyes, and well, it's really a good idea to specify the range of the x and y axis and say from the left side, and you feel like this is a constant increase, right? However, if you take a closer look on the range of the y-axis, and then you find that the difference is really small. And if you want to put the y-axis range from 0 to 3.5%, and you see there's almost nothing got changed. So if you want to emphasize on small changes and to cheat people's eyes, and this is the next trick you can do. Okay, and well, say for this one, if I want to specify the range of the y-axis should start from 2 and then go all the way up to 12, and then I want to do a set y-lim, and then I specify where to begin and where to end. Okay, and now let's move on, and then we have a new data set. We have the GDP per capita and the life expectancy. Well, and they have the corresponding relationship, like this the first item of the GDP per capita and the first item for the life expectancy, and they are for the same country. And again, the second item and the second item, they are for the second country. Okay, and then we want to do a line plot. Oh, and go ahead and plug in the code and try to run this. If you get something which is as messy as this, not a big problem, and later we are going to figure out why together. Okay, and by the way, well, if since we are doing this, and we should have a discussion, and is GDP a good indicator of the wealthiness of a country, and how about the GDP per person, and what's your idea? So think about that. Well, and what I can say is there are some countries that have big GDP but very low GDP per capita. Why? Because there are countries have big population, and on the other side there are some smaller countries. If you see the GDP, this GDP is not huge. However, if you grab the GDP and then divide it by the number of the population, that's the GDP per capita, and then they're really big. And for example, like Luxembourg, for example, okay? So there are some countries, big population. It looks like they have a big GDP, but if you try to distribute the GDP evenly to each person in the country, and then that's not a wealthy country at all. And on the other side, you will also see some rich country. They are small, uh, and then the GDP is not big number, but the GDP per capita is big. Okay, so that's the reason that we want to have the GDP per capita and the life expectancy. So my hope is, well, if this country is wealthy, and then wealthy on individual level, this means the GDP per capita is high, and then I would expect the life expectancy is also high. And then let's check out if it is true. So plug in the code here and then run this if you get something messy, and then we are gonna have a fix. Okay, so I suggest you pause your video here and do the coding here, and then we move on and we talk about how we can get this fixed. Okay, so pause the video here. Okay, so well, probably you have already got the same messy plot here. And what's the problem? So just now we make almost the same line chart, and then we got this, and this is beautiful. However, when we move down and we got this one, and this is ugly. And what's going on? Okay, here's the problem. The problem is, well, from this axis, we are using the year, right? And then this is 1950, 1951, 1952. So we have the pairs of the data sorted. So the year, which is the x-axis, it is already sorted. Okay, and then let's move down and talk about this. So for this one, the y-axis is the life expectancy and the x-axis is the GDP per capita. And the problem is, for the GDP per capita, this is not sorted. Okay, so how do we fix that? And how about we just combine the first two values into a pair, the second two values into a pair, the third two values into a pair, and then we combine them. And after that, we sort the pairs based on the first value, which is the GDP per capita. And how do we do that? Well, in Python, there is a cool thing, and that is called zip. So we want to zip those two lists together. It's like the first one and first one combined, the second one combined, third one combined. So we are zipping two lists together, and we got a group of zipped pairs. After we have the zip pairs, and then we sort the zipped pairs, and by default we sort on the first value. And after that, we break the zipped pairs into two lists. So we zip the pairs, we sort them, and then we break them again into two pairs. And now we have the x list and y list, and then they are both sorted. Okay, and after that, and do another visualization, and now you should be able to get something like this. Okay, so you should plug in exactly the same code, and then you should get this visualization. Okay, so the next thing, let's talk about this visualization. And number one, what's your observation here? So it's, well, and number one, what are your visualizations? And number two, do you really want to do a line plot in this case? So think about that. Okay, so here is my observation. It seems that on the left side there are poor countries, and then when the countries are poor, and then the GDP per capita is low, and then the life expectancy is also low. That is exactly expected, right? And then on the upper right corner, and we have the richer countries, and then we also have the life expectancy around 80. So that's good. So it kind of give us what we expect for the wealthy country, and then the GDP per capita is high, the life expectancy is also high. And then on the lower left corner, and then the GDP per capita is low, and then the life expectancy is also low. So we kind of see what we want to see, right? And the next question, do you really want to do a line chart in this case? Think about that. And my answer is probably no, because by connecting a line between two dots or two samples, we are expecting there is a kind of continuity between those two samples. And in our case, we are not really assuming that, and we are not arguing that too. So say here is one country, here is the other country. Why do we draw a line between those countries? Only because country 1 and country 2, they have the close GDP per capita. But other than that, those countries are not neighbors, those countries are not close to each other. Why do we draw a line between two countries? Only because they have similar GDP per capita. And my argument is no, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video here, and I will continue this discussion in the next video.